Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review. This is part of our Language Completeness and Consistency series. And we have three topics here that all look straightforward, but those are always the way. I love the way that induces an instant cackle. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, well, I suppose we do have the occasional straightforward topic, but
Yeah, right. It's very rare.
yes.
Okay.
Right. So just to bring us all up to speed, right? So if you look at that first framed image, right, if you click on the W and P, you'll see that, right, they're both the same size, and they, are filling up the box. And then because, right, you don't rasterize an expression, you rasterize a cell. So if you rasterize something, it has to typeset it and then stick it in a cell, and then that's
Okay,
rasterized.
so hold on. What are we actually seeing here? We're seeing, oh, I see. We see
it's the full ascender and descender in every case. Basically a full line height.
Right. And the problem with that is that if I'm labeling a plot with a P, it's got a bunch of, and it's a bitmap, I've got a bunch of crud around the P.
Well,
which I would say to the solution to that is to make the background transparent, and then it doesn't matter much.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone really cares about bitmap labeling a plot case.
We do care about that. We care about it for machine learning kinds of things, and also
what I was just going to say was the case that you had raised was machine learning. I thought it was the training scenario.
No, it's labeling a feature space plot, for example. I mean, you want me to demo?
Why do they use bitmaps?
Because that's what it's. Look, here's the case.
You'd say yes. Well.
Okay. Okay, this is going to use, okay, those are bitmaps of those letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't see anything bad happening here, but if I were to do, I bet I can even make something bad happen here. Okay, that actually looks quite good because the descenders all, it all lines up, the baselines all line up in that case. So we win in that case by having this sort of full font bounding box.
Right. I mean, I think the issues where you come up with this is, if you're doing right, if you have like a pane or a graphics, and you specify an image size to that, but then you get a couple of pixels off because of whatever silliness leaks into it, or that's the case where I've encountered this issue, and I'm not 100% convinced that the proposed option actually fixes the issue due to other issues that it introduces. But and the other case is where you might want, so if you scroll back up to the WP example, right, I think there was some desire to get a thing that looks like the third bitmap. This was an example from some meeting I was not in, but apparently where this was discussed, perhaps in relation to EIWL. And so in the third one, right, they're both sort of right next to each other and full size. And sort of the issue is, right, if you just sort of trim to the, trim out the white space, then what does image size apply to? So if you click on the middle frame, you'll see that the W is full height, but the P is simply centered because, well, it's in a row, but all that white space was sort of trimmed away.
All right,
may or may not be what you want.
Let's zoom out for a second. So wait a minute. If I do
and actually the mismatching sizes I think are misleading because something crossed the threshold there where the W ends up with the magnification, some auto magnification getting applied because we apply magnification to bitmaps that start to get too small.
Oh. Okay.
So if you right click the W and choose actual size, and right click the P and choose actual size.
Thanks, John. Okay. Then
so that matched height, and the one below matched width. Is that right?
So then the one below, I sort of resized them both to be the same size as the original W.
Itai actually used the image resize operation below.
All right, but let's zoom out.
So is it like just?
So if you take a close look, you can see that the P is just ever so slightly taller than the W. And I think what happened, there literally is a threshold where it's like, use default magnification, then cross the threshold and step up the magnification because the bitmap is considered too small. And those steps are discrete in such a way that it can look very odd when, when you cross that threshold.
Okay. But
right. But so for example, if instead of a P we had an A there, then we would have sort of a centered A in the middle example.
Correct.
Because presumably that would be less tall than a capital W.
Yes, that would be my expectation. The second example uses image crop, so just rerun this the second example, but add an A to it.
Right, and again, we want to have to do the actual
size. Yeah.
How do you do that programmatically?
Wrap image around the whole list and say image size all.
Okay, so that is writing.
So now you can see the A is significantly shorter.
Yeah.
Whereas the P is, you might not have expected it, but the P is like ever so slightly taller than a capital W.
And why is there so much space across the top even? Right, I've set frame margins to none and content padding to false.
I'm not sure. That might just be an update issue after redoing the magnification. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay.
Might be a bug though.
Yeah, it might be.
Okay. All right. So the issue here really is, do you want consistent boxing for the whole font? Or do you want shrink wrapping for an individual element?
Right. That's right.
Are those the two possibilities? Is there anything else?
So like I said, I don't care so much about the texty case, because I think basically what you do want is in fact something that looks like a line of text in a cell. But what I get is, I create a panel or something, or which I make to be, 400 by 400 points, I guess, not pixels. And then I try to rasterize it, and it's 402 by 400, after I've converted between points, because that extra little bit of stuff around it, from being actually part of a cell. is an issue. But I'm not sure that this actually solves that problem.
Well, it solves it by introducing a potential new problem, which is that you might end up with something that's like 390 or 380 instead of 400, because it would effectively trim off the unused space around the edges, which could include part of that 400 width
right.
that you had specified, or 400 height, I guess, sorry.
Okay, so hold on. Content padding does seem to be the relevant option here. Correct?
Well, it's an option for things like frame.
It's a box option.
Right.
But its functionality seems relevant for this, isn't it? I mean, it's the thing that makes these guys different sizes. It seems like it's the right option that you picked.
Yeah, it's a little weird because, I mean, it's been exclusively used as a box option, not an option to a kernel function that actually makes transformations. Now, maybe that's not a strong enough argument to say it should be different.
I mean, look, it seems like it's exactly the same thing it's doing here.
Well, I mean, I would say it's a little different, right? Because it's the difference between, what I'm adding this extra layer. Do I put a buffer between this layer and this new wrapper and what was already there, versus do I somehow shrink to what's visible?
I understand, but isn't that exactly what this is saying? It's either using the full line height. I see, not at least one full line height. What is a line height? Is relative to the font height.
Right. Right. Line height is defined by the font.
Okay. So, okay, so what's wrong with just having this content padding arrow true or false? Would that get the functionality we want? So content padding arrow false.
We'll have to rewrite this documentation a bit to accommodate that.
Right. I mean, it would,
because it's no longer an option for objects.
No, I understand. But I mean,
yeah.
but does that, okay, so the two choices are it shrink wraps to the individual object,
right,
or it does it for the line height. And it's only height that's relevant. It's not width. Is that true?
Correct. I mean, this is basically.
Well, I guess that depends on what we want this option to mean in rasterize. Right, because there's certainly cases where, is that true?
If you're asking, does content padding, for example, horizontally pad a monospaced character to guarantee its monospacing? I haven't thought about that question.
No. The question I'm asking about, I mean, you can certainly make something where, I'm trying to think of if there's a case when you rasterize something where the thing you want to trim off is actually the sides and not the top and bottom.
Rotate the raster, but I don't think that really counts. But also,
that's a post rasterize operation.
Okay, okay. Assume it's not single letters, but it's some whole complicated thing. This whole question about whether there's space around the bounding box. The primary reason that there's space being left around these bounding boxes is because of font heights. If we had something like in the example down below for content padding of 1/2, that doesn't have any padding anyway. See what I'm saying? There is no content padding for 1/2. There's only content padding for things which are font things, which are part of a family.
There is no external content padding to 1/2. There is a bit of internal content padding.
Okay, but I mean, but this content padding option would apply only to the outermost thing, and it can be applied to the 1/2 just as it can be applied to the A, right? Except that for 1/2, there is no line height. If 1/2 was tiny compared to the line height, then it would pad to the line height, presumably.
Right. Well, you know, and you can artificially force these kinds of scenarios. You can, you know, you can have, you know, wrap style boxes around the numerator and denominator that make those individual things incredibly small, and thereby shrink the fraction below the ambient font size of the whole thing.
So you're saying, take this and I take that, for example.
Just,
then,
no, not around the entire fraction, around the individually around the numerator and the denominator.
Okay. Kind of unfortunate I have to delete these double quotes separately. You like me to make this very small?
Yeah.
And the one below?
And the one below as well.
Same smallness?
Sure. And yeah, so.
Oh God, that's a big mess. Okay, let's see, I can get it up to 8 points, for example. Why the heck is that first one with content padding out of false? I don't get this. I don't get what's happening here.
So type anything next to the those boxes. Out, but out. Sorry. That's this is a grid. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the issue here is the size of the box around the A on the upper right. That's the guide, because that's the size of the font for the grid box.
Yeah.
Now, and because we reduced the size of the numerator and denominator, we actually made the fraction as a whole smaller than that size.
Yes.
It's not something that would typically happen if you didn't play games with the fonts, but you can play games with the fonts to make it happen.
But I mean, this is the ambient size, but as soon as I put in different styling for individual elements, you're saying that the grid as a whole gets its sizing from the ambient style, not the style of its individual elements.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is the box on the lower right is coming from what, a 15. It's based on a 15-point font, I think it is, or whatever the ambient font size is. I think it's 15 in this case, and not the 8-point guys that are found at a deeper nesting.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
I understand. So everything is based on the 15-point thing. So this thing, this whole box arrangement is based on that, which is why there's all this empty space.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying I'm worried about this case. I'm just saying there are exceptions and they look like this.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's come back to what we were talking about. So, I mean, this definitely should go into possible issues for this thing, but okay, so the concept is content padding arrow false does it sort of one letter at a time. What you see is what determines the padding, as opposed to content padding arrow true, which is what font you're in determines what padding. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems okay to me. Anybody got an objection to this? Nope. Okay. I think
well, I still, I mean, I guess I'll just reiterate, I guess, that it is a bit weird that this thing that, you know, was sort of a box level option is now being turned into a kernel function option.
I don't consider that weird. It seems like it's doing exactly the same thing. Unless I'm missing something. I mean, it literally seems identical. Check it out. Try and remember, but it looks identical to me, and I don't see a problem. It's only us that knows kind of what's a box option versus this option versus that option. It just doesn't seem problematic to me. Anybody want to comment further on that? Who's here who would have other comments?
I'm not objecting, so.
Right.
Same here. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Carried. On to the next item. Test applied.
Yes. So this is like from 2 years ago or something. But there's a prototype of it here. Basically, the function is, you know, in the family of operator applied and stuff like that, sort of a function that eats a function, and its main purpose is, you know, if you have, let's say, a chain of compositions and one thing in the middle of the chain might return a missing or a failure or something like that, and you want to be able to sort of pass it down the chain, this lets you do that.
Or up the chain, rather. I mean, in other words, by test applied,
it lets you do the idiom, you know, if missing q of hash, then hash, otherwise f of hash. It does a little more than that, right, but that's like the simplest case.
Right. So if applying the test succeeds, then run this function, otherwise run this function here.
Right. So that's the complete yes. Right. And then and then there are implied defaults for the third argument and the second argument.
Right. So the two complicating things are, I mean, otherwise it's a very simple function. The two, actually maybe three complicating things. One, what's a failure? Right now I'm just following what confirm does, which it's like failure Q or missing Q, or if it's $ canceled or $ aborted or something like that. The next thing is what the defaults are for the different arguments 2 and 3. And the last one is the var_args behavior, if it has any.
Okay, so the basic point is, in the case where I just give, okay, hold on, let me understand this.
There's, by the way, there's an implementation. If you run the init thing, that'll probably be useful.
Where is the init?
Below.
Right below. It's the why I told you should run the init cells.
Okay, fine. All right, so then, okay, so here, this is only going to fail. What the hell is that?
It's only running square root if the thing is positive.
Oh, I see. It's positive. Yeah, right. So I remove that, and now it's only going to trigger on the missing.
Yep.
Where
right. And the default behavior passed it through unchanged.
Right, I understand. As opposed to if I said square root of missing,
you'd get square root of missing.
Yeah.
Right. So a really useful example that shows potential var_arg behavior is this, right? You know, test applied of divide, comma, #2 is not 0. Yeah, just that, and then map that over, you know, some you know, list of lists where some of them might have a 0 in the second argument.
I want to do triple that.
Sure. Oh, yes, yeah.
Oh, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. You were right. It was just a
yes.
Wait, no, no, it should be triple at. Hold
No,
on,
it's
sorry.
hash
let me-
of 2 there.
And then, no, it should be hash 2. This is, I was trying to show the varargs behavior. I'm sort of confused why it's not even showing the, can you just replace the test replied with an F, just so we can see what's going on? And you should do triple at instead of ampersand / at. Get rid of the ampersand for sure.
Oh, that's probably the,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
that was the problem. That was the extra ampersand was,
Oh, was there, yeah, okay,
Yeah, but
there
it's a
you go.
Yep.
Right, so you see here, basically all 3 functions, the third argument is kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's basically the what to do if it fails. But basically all 3 functions are all varargs, and they all just take all the arguments that get passed into test applied. So the test gets to see all the arguments, the function itself gets to see all the arguments, and so on.
Right. I see. Okay. Yep.
I mean, this thing with divide, for example, you know, I've written a million times.
Yeah. Okay, let me think about this for a second. So this is, by the way, the confusion that we all had about the fact that this needed a function, that this itself, the test applied, was itself a function. I don't think the name test applied is obviously horrible.
Well, it kind of makes it sound like you're applying the test, but yeah.
exactly. Right, I was
That's
going
They
to,
have, I mean,
has been applied.
there was a notebook, I mean, again, from 2 years ago, there was a notebook where we spent like an hour or something talking about names for this and one other thing. And I think there were a lot of different ideas for it. So if we're going to talk about naming, we should get those up. But yeah, I might be able to find it.
Yeah, I'll have to find it real quick.
Sure, thanks. It's on the Jira ticket.
Okay, I might be able to find it too. Let me just try typing this in.
Well, we were also talking about some other things like replace missing and so on.
This is the beginnings of supplied here.
That's way newer, isn't it?
I have no idea. I just
Test apply. I remember I looked that I wrote this like I think November of 2 years ago, like November of
okay.
2020 or something like that.
My God, that was already during the pandemic period. Wow. Well, just I don't know. Okay. Avery, you found a bunch of these. Did you find everything, do you think?
Let me send you a notebook. Yeah, there's a lot of names you had.
The Q words are not right.
yeah,
Well, that's because we were talking about there were two. Another thing we were talking about, which isn't here, was basically having what we eventually I think decided would be a 2-argument failure, failure queue for asking, you know, because right now failure queue basically just checks is it $failed or is it _failure. But the idea is we'd have other versions that also check if it's missing and also check if it's whatever else.
right.
Okay.
That's a
Question.
different discussion though.
What is when you have a test? It's confirmed test, right? That's the version of test.
Confirmed by.
Ah. Okay.
I mean, we could have something like apply if. Right, like apply this if this condition is met, otherwise don't.
Unfortunately,
It's a little
not
bit
apply.
cryptic.
It's a construct, not an apply.
No, it's apply, isn't it?
No, it's not.
No, it's construct.
No, because construct takes, you know, f comma xyz and constructs f of xyz. This is apply of f of xyz turns into f of xyz. can you run apply of f of XYZ? I'm not sure actually if the level specs all work out, but or like if it's by default at the right level, but is there any function though that does I think this is apply, it's just at the wrong, or maybe or is it operate or something?
Okay, it does that.
Yeah, but that is wait, let me
Look,
see.
I'm pretty sure this is construct because it's isn't it construct?
I don't think it's construct.
No, it's not construct because construct will be f of xy does that.
Yeah.
Whereas what we actually have, there is no name. It is
Well,
the,
it actually
is
does
the
have a name. It's
thing
called
without-
identity. Identity of f of XYZ returns f of XYZ. At best, it's maybe operate is close. Actually, no, operate is, it would be operate of f comma. No, that's just f comma the list XY. Yeah, okay.
Well, is this like operator applied or something with some, maybe that's where this name came from, but, right, like,
Yeah, it's like operator applied, but it isn't operator.
But with useless arguments, yes. If you tell it to just pass through everything.
right.
You know, I got to tell you, TestApplied is not the worst name for this.
Well,
I mean, let's look at the pipeline. Let's look at what one of these pipelines would look like. Give me an example of something where we say image crop. Do we still have shoddy here? Not shoddy drop.
Well, image crop doesn't usually fail
I'm
very
here.
much. I mean, if you give
Okay,
it good
let's
arguments,
see.
it'll basically
Okay,
work.
I just want a
right?
pipeline where you've got to give, you know, some
So-
standard. Go
The
ahead.
most common examples I have are either things where there's a missing in the middle or like a 0 that you don't want to divide or an infinity or something in the middle. So for a missing, anything with entities, you can get a missing in the middle of
Right.
anything.
Right.
Right, so just give me a real example. Let's just type in a real example. Let's say from image processing pipeline or from any other pipeline.
Well, let's say you're mapping over countries and you're
Mhm.
getting their populations, and then you are, I mean, this isn't a
Or
great way of
divide by
writing
their
it.
areas, right? You want to calculate their density, so you get the populations and the areas and you divide them. But if one of them is missing or hopefully none of them is 0, but
Right.
run into trouble.
Okay, so let's take this as an example.
The only thing is I'm not sure that we're going to be able to write this nicely as like a chain of compositions, but yeah, let's try.
Okay, this. So that thing there is a function. Okay.
Mhm.
And you know what I want to do? I want to do a total of this. Actually, why would I bother with TestApplied then? I want to do
With the TestApplied, I think you want to do the hash of population will almost certainly work. The thing that won't work is whatever comes next, because the result of hash of population will be a missing.
No, I understand that. Okay, so I want to just do squared here.
Right, but what you should write
Can't do
is
that
you should
because
write
I-
hash of population. Yeah. No, but the TestApplied should be around the squared, because that's what will fail.
No, it isn't. This will give a missing.
Right, that will give a missing.
Exactly.
But TestApplied only checks if there are missings in the arguments. If you
Oh,
want
I
to do that, that's what confirm does.
Okay, so hold on. TestApplied of
Pound square.
hash here squared.
Yeah. Well,
Ampersand.
No,
No,
whoa, no. The function
pound
in the
squared
TestApplied.
ampersand, right? Pound the squared ampersand close bracket.
Where? In here.
Yes.
Yes.
TestApplied takes a function and it makes a new version of the function that just passes failures through it.
So you need.
Oh, I see.
So you need that bracket to the right of the ampersand.
It's pretty subtle. Okay, and then this thing applied to hash of population.
Yeah, I mean, maybe compose it if you want to be stylish, because we're kind of talking about chain composition things here, but yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's compose that, which You mean
at star. Yeah. And you'll need parentheses, I think. And then
Yep.
just map it over like entity list of country. I
I
mean,
don't
this is
think I need it,
horribly
but-
inefficient. I mean, you should just do it with entity value, but whatever.
Does that work?
Wait,
should-
that I don't think that works. No.
But now I have to ampersand that.
Yeah,
And then I take the whole thing. I have no idea about the precedence. So look,
that's correct for map. Yeah.
Yeah.
Entity list of country, and then presumably like Antarctica or something will fail. Why? I still don't know why Antarctica is a country here, but whatever.
well, let's say entity list of
I mean, they're almost all going to succeed for population. That's why I'm telling you, Antarctica
well,
is the
I
best
know,
bet.
I know, but I want to get an entity list here.
We're just
Oh.
entity list of country, quotes country.
There's just going to be a lot of places. Let's watch our caching in action.
Well, you could do country part, you could do take of country come up, 10 because Antarctica is alphabetically quite early
Why is it so centrally slow?
because it has to make 200 requests, but
But I
yes,
thought
it shouldn't
did
be.
because it let's freeze it out, so to speak. I mean,
Well, the real thing to try is if you do, yeah, no, I know that's the much more efficient way to do it, but we're trying to write it with,
yeah.
I guess you could just do entity value of country comma population and then map the test applied over that.
Where's Antarctica? That looks like it's
Unless we finally fixed it and we no longer have Antarctica in the list of countries.
Yeah, can you just run entity list of country just to see what the, Oh, there it is. There's number 9. So you've got to. There we go.
okay.
Right, except I have no idea what test applied means, right? It's like I'm taking this test and applying it, but no, I'm not taking a test.
No, you're not. Yeah. It's really, it is.
And most of the time, by the way, you're not going to pass in a test at all. Like you're going to use the automatic test, the default test.
Right. I was going to, I'm not suggesting this is a good name, but I feel like tested apply is at least closer in spirit. I'm doing some testing before I carelessly apply this function.
Confirmed apply, although I usually don't like the confirm names that aren't actual confirm enclosed functions, but
Clean.
I mean, really what it is, it's like a safe version of your function. I mean, it's like, this is not a good, this is too vague, but like, it's like saying safe of F. And now you know that F is something that can take, or I don't know, error ignorant.
Protected of
or
F,
something.
but it isn't protected of F. It's kind of like
It's sanitized of F.
Right. Yeah.
well, what do you mean it's sanitized? It's not the F that's being sanitized. It's the thing that's coming into F. F doesn't want to eat. Look,
Right.
F is going to reject any food that has dirt on it.
So should it be sanitize of F?
Well, that makes
No.
it sound like it's sanitizing. I mean, we can
Yeah,
either talk about
No.
we can either talk about sort of in the phrasing of F is a function that only takes clean stuff. So please, now that I've told you this, make sure everything is clean. Or we can talk about it as like a verb that's like, well, or we can talk about it in reference to the arguments and say, this is a thing that will clean up the arguments and give them death, if you understand what I'm saying.
No, it's not cleaning up any arguments. It's just punting F.
Okay, sure. Yes.
Right. It's rejecting.
Right.
We can
it's
have a
sanitizing the
descriptive
data
term
feed.
that's describing F, or we can have it as like something that's like more verb-like.
sanitize 4 of F.
No, but it isn't. You see,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
sanitized
sanitizing
for
condi-
plot or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous what I have there.
it sounds a little bit like a for loop, but yes.
Um,
Mm.
see,
But
the
this
problem is that we're not like sterilizing, decontaminating, whatever, F itself.
exactly. That's what makes this hard to name.
But you could talk about it as, what would you call a function that should never be given an error?
Coddle of F.
Coddled. Right.
I mean, look, protected of F, if we hadn't used protected for a lot of other things.
Right.
Well, but maybe it's kind of the opposite of protected. I mean, depending on how you're phrasing it, right? Like it's an
Avoid
F
calling F. Avoid calling F if it is a version of F that where it doesn't call the F if it isn't good. Reject all food that looks bad, and
picky.
pass. Pass. Okay, here's another way to say it.
But see, again, just to
On a thing that looks bad. Engage only when it's engage only when it's something good.
right. Again, though, to be clear, there's two. You can either name it like picky of F to say basically this is we're making a version of F that is picky, or we could call it something like afraid of failures of F, which is more of like a tag to say F is afraid of failures and you should never give it one, if you get what I mean.
No, I understand.
Yeah, although in a sense it's really unpickify of F, right? Because F can now be fed missings, and they just sort of that's not a problem anymore.
Right.
Well, unless you view it as the second version where we're telling you F is picky. But
Right.
yes, yeah.
No, I don't think that's the right thing. I think it needs to be look, basically this is
or should it be pre-screened of F?
That's interesting.
I do think, by the way, this is one of those names that would be good to be short. Again, because
Yeah,
I think like operator applied, for example, I think part of the killer is it's too long, but yes.
Nick Mertzen gave the suggestion maybe monad, so maybe apply, or very like maybe a monad.
Right, there's the maybe monad, right? There's a list
Yeah.
I gave at the end of the section below. There's sort of similar things in a bunch of different languages. I mean, it's the same as option in Rust. It's the same as optionals in Swift, or like the optional chaining operator.
Relations to other languages has these names
Yeah.
in other languages.
Actually, there's some really crazy names like Rust, right? Rust has map, and they have a thing called and then. So you have your thing, and then you say dot and then. And I have never, there's and then there's also then, and there's also and I can never keep straight, which is which. Right. And then Haskell
I don't think
has
any of these are any good.
Right. Haskell has functor map.
Great. That's going to
this.
help everybody.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Swift is the best one, which is just that if you have, I mean, because they do everything with methods, right? So if you have something that's a maybe, basically an optional type, instead of writing dot foo to apply the foo method, you write question mark dot foo. But yeah.
I see. Yeah, that is.
So the analogous thing for us would be, instead of writing f of x, you write
right.
f question mark.
Right. Right. So this is, so instead of f at x, it would be sort of f
Question mark at x. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that actually works for us, but yeah.
And unfortunately, because we don't have a name for the at really, other than sort of the strange. I mean, as you say, the only name for the, okay, hold on. So this
I don't think it needs to be that though. F question mark open bracket x would theoretically work as well. I mean, again, it doesn't work, but yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, so hold on. What is this really doing? This is What the heck is this doing? Okay, what would be the sentence that we would say? Okay, so we say blah.
I'd put a suggestion in chat.
Okay. Well, actually, what we have to say is rather this. We have to say blah of f of x bar.
Yeah.
You know, basically, it just gives f of x bar if x bar is not considered a failure and x bar otherwise.
Yeah. Okay, come on, there's a way to do this. Okay, what is this doing? It's wrapping f to say if you don't like what you're being fed, just spit it out.
What about something like unsuccess?
On success or unsuccess?
On, O-N.
Right. So on success, run this. Yeah.
I think it's weird to think of two as being success.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but imagine you write on success of f, of entity value of blah, blah, blah. So you're saying if the entity value succeeded, then do this.
Yeah, but I know, but the success seems to come from the wrong place. It's kind of like,
well, there's also the question of what about the, the divide case, right? I want to apply divide, if the denominator is 0, is that really not a success?
If valid of f, if safe of f.
Yeah, but it's not the f itself, you see. It's if the food, if.
Right.
Well, it's saying f, do f if valid, right?
Yeah.
On condition.
Well, there's some maybe conflicts with on.
Okay, hold on.
Well,
What about
we could call it conditional, and then we would have to explain how it differs both from condition and conditioned.
Maybe we should just call it on, and it will just do something baffling if you give it a message name.
I was about to point out that we already have something called on, but then you preempted me.
Right.
What's another analogy other than it rejects its food because it's too picky? See, because usually the thing which is confusing here is usually in functional based programming, functions, you have a function, you feed it something, it just does its thing, right? So this is a very weird case where it is symbolically rejecting it somehow.
Right. It's anorexic of f.
I mean,
right?
but really the thing is,
it spits it out if it doesn't like it.
I mean, the thing is, I think right. I mean, two things. I mean, the first thing is that most kind of, well, I don't know, most quote unquote clean functions will already do this in the sense that, if a function's really been thought
Yeah.
through, it'll know what to do when you give it a missing. I mean, of course, that's not true of user-defined functions, and in reality, it's not true of a lot of system functions also. But
Right, and
Yeah.
I for one don't agree that it's obvious that, you know, missing plus missing equals missing, right?
Yeah, no, it is.
right. Although this is supposed
Okay.
to, this will hopefully get rid of some of those situations, but yeah.
I mean, apart from the fact that it's too long and doesn't really apply to all the right cases and has weird words in it, missing protected seems like a not totally ridiculous thing to have in a chain here. I mean, if I had this and it says,
Except it's not missing.
I know,
Best it's failure, but yeah. I mean, again, this is kind of similar to the discussions we had about confirm, right? Where confirm was the conclusion of the, you know, how do you say something that's kind of correct?
yes, I see what you're saying. I mean, confirm just does, it's a no-op if it's correct.
Right. I mean,
Is
so you
what
would
the-
call this something like confirmed applied or something like that. Again, though, I am generally skeptical of calling
Yeah,
things confirmed that aren't confirmed. Because it makes it sound like, oh, this is something that needs to be inside of an enclosed when it's not.
Right, but confirm is a word that has this feature that it's perfectly okay for it to be a no-op. Because that's what this needs as well.
Maybe validated.
But one of the ones I can see on the JIRA ticket was called conditional applied. I don't know if we have that above.
I think that's totally weird because it's a see, it's not the F that is confirmed or checked or whatever.
Right. Right, which is why I was suggesting like validated apply, because it's the application that's validated, not the F itself.
Yeah.
Although I agree that's a bit of a mouthful.
Okay, what would it be? It would be like input validated of F. But would anybody figure out what is actually going on there? In other words, what does it
I mean, that is to me much more comprehensible than test applied and many of the other, you know, names, because I'm like, okay, right, I've done something to change how it handles its inputs, right? That makes sense to
well,
me.
input validated, yeah, but what about validated on its own?
It's a little confusing because it is very synonymous with confirm.
Right.
Like
And obviously the thing that's, it's not the thing inside of there that's being validated. So that's potential, you know, potential source of confusion.
Yes. Okay, well, so input validated is least crazy, but it's too long. So let's see how we reduce this poetically from 2 words to less.
Yeah, I mean, I
How
honestly,
about-
I still am a fan of the things that were like on such and such, but yeah.
How about pre-validate?
Again, though, it makes it sound like you're validating the function, not the,
I suppose. Right,
Pre-validated.
I'm making the connection between, $pre and the fact that this operates on inputs. Maybe that's a suggestion that only makes sense to me, but
Okay, so let's think of some cases of this, okay, in the world of whimsical cases. It's a stupid case, right? You have a flow of water through a pipe and you put a grate to prevent, fish coming from the river. I mean, I admit that's a pretty stupid case, but what would you call that kind of, I'm sure there's some
there's
generic
a word for that, great, but yeah.
I would call that guarded.
Yes, that's an interesting word.
Filtered.
That's not a bad word either.
Oh, I like that. Because again, I suppose there's the potential ambiguity of, are you filtering the F or the input, and the F is the thing you see, but
Right. Another problem is,
Filter-
is people
filter
being confused
for.
about select. But yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Okay, there's sieved, sieve. Purified.
by the way, just guarded was another idea for confirm
I
a
remember.
long time ago.
Yeah. I've started using, I gave up finally on using an actual sort of physical thesaurus, and I've now started using various websites, of which the one of the more amusing ones is this related words website.
I'm not familiar with this.
I've seen this, yeah.
Gated.
Huh, that's
It's an interesting
not-
one.
yeah.
Babysat. Wary.
Kind of like wary.
Scared of F.
Okay, there's some interesting ones here. Fenced, barricaded. Well, that's silly, but
Fenced is not crazy in my opinion.
yeah, but I think that it's something in that general.
Like heavily fortified, something like that.
Well, it's only fenced. It's not heavily fortified, right? But
Defended, fortified.
check posted, right? There's a check. Really, this is adding a check post.
Yes.
I mean, is F in some way strict?
No.
I mean, it's not, accepting things loosely. It's
Well, in the sense of,
Yeah.
in the
I mean-
sense, F is dumb. So, I guess we could.
I
call it
like these.
hard-
I like terms like this, fenced or something. It's not quite right, but something like that.
Right, but I think this is if you imagine it in a composition chain, what do you think it means? I mean, again, this is why I liked the on blank ones, because it's very clear what it means in a composition chain. Right. I mean, the extreme of that. So the most extreme, and I think this is bad, is the rust, and then and so on, where it's like, this is supposed to be, if you're reading your code and you hit this in a chain of composition, that you say the word and then blah blah blah, which I think that's too much. But I think if a little bit of that can be okay.
Qualified?
It has a degree or something.
Yeah. I think there's something in the fence, barricade, not stockade, caged, enclosed.
Well, that's taken.
Oh, yes.
I don't know. I think
Something-
the prison words I think are all kind of niche. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, but I understand. But I think it's fenced for its protection.
For some reason, these closed metaphors seem strange to me, and open metaphors make more sense. Like things pass through it. It won't get choked up on a missing.
Okay.
Right.
It's the identity on missing operation or on missing expressions.
Okay. So what's okay. Let me try a completely different category. Something like that. That's not right, but it has an override.
Talk about sort of short circuiting if you give it something it doesn't understand.
Right.
Fail safe?
That's not a terrible word.
That's not bad. Yeah.
That's actually pretty good.
The S lowercase.
I think.
And well, let me check Merriam-Webster, but I'm pretty sure it's one word.
Okay, yeah. Online, it first shows up with a hyphen, but then I think also as one
It's
word.
smooshed. I'm sure it's smooshed.
Merriam-Webster
Fail-safe is good. Yeah, go ahead.
Merriam-Webster says it's dash.
Tough luck.
Okay.
That which dashes smooshes. Think website.
Wiktionary also has it as one word. They have it as both, so.
So one word is the direction it's going.
Always.
Yeah,
It
that
always
really is true. That really is true. Over and over again, that happens with all kinds of words.
Can you think of any that go the other way? I can't.
No. I mean, I can think of some where there's resistance for a long time. You know, a lot of ambiguity in cell phone, one word versus two, for example, still.
Yeah, but I mean, there's things like reevaluate where it starts looking very weird. There must be ones where you have triple letters if you smoosh. Fail-safe is quite good.
Mhm.
Definitely the best we've had. It's really quite good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So in a chain, you'd have it like, fail safe of divide, comma, hash not is not 0 or something like that.
I mean, we'd say fail-safe. I like this. This is
Yeah,
really,
okay.
I mean, this is really quite,
Yeah, no, I think this works.
naming is hard. Test applied to fail-safe is not a trivial transformation. Okay, is there any other
I mean, there were a couple of minor points worth pointing
yeah,
out.
okay, let's look at this. Okay, I like the name failsafe. Okay. So the description would be makes failsafe of F, applies F to expert in a fail-safe way.
That's not a good usage line.
Well,
Yeah,
giving it doesn't really matter. I'm just making it up to see whether the sentence works. Giving f of x per if x per is not considered a failure. Blah, 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 blah. All right, let's look at the other cases here, because this name may inform the other cases as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the main question is right. So I think, right. So this is the two questions, the sort of, okay, there's the, should it support var-args? And if it does, what is the test applied to? Right. So one version would be the test gets applied to every argument individually. So you could write something like missing q, and it would check if any arguments are missing. The other version, which based on some experiments, I think makes a lot more sense, is the version here where it's the test gets applied in a var-args way to all the arguments. And that way you can do the #2 is not zero case and other
okay,
stuff.
so this is this case, failsafe of f of x, y, z. That's the case you're considering.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly the default has to be, if any are missing, the hell do you give? I mean, in other words, because the problem is,
the default one checks if any of them are missing, and if any of them are missing, it returns the first one that's missing, which I think makes sense. But the question is more about, if you give a general second argument, what should it do? Because I can't think of anything else reasonable it would do on the.
okay, so the question is whether the test. Okay. The first thing that's a little bit arbitrary here is, if failsafe fails on z, that it returns the failed z.
Yes.
Let's just remind ourselves, the term failsafe, I think it was invented. Was it a Cold War term? I mean, was that where it was invented, or was it invented long before that with trains or something? I'm just trying to remember what the
First known use 1931.
There's the
I mean,
failsafe point, which is a Cold War thing.
Yeah, right. It says here, causing piece of machinery to revert to a safe condition in the event of a breakdown or malfunction. It's a great word. It's a great name for this functionality. See, the problem is, in a chain here, because this isn't really, okay, inserting this var-args form, is there a curried way that you would insert that var-args form? Because normally the reversion to a safe condition will only work when there's a single thing that you're passing through. It's not clear what I would slightly make the argument that we should not have this work right now for the var-args case, and here's why. Because I think we're going to have a more sophisticated version as we get these string diagrams and other forms of kind of functions returning more than one thing, multis and all that kind of stuff. I have this feeling we might want something more sophisticated for this.
I mean, I would argue if a function returns more than one thing, the next function is still going to get it as n arguments, right? I mean, like, we already do have a way of functions receiving multiple arguments.
Yes, we just don't have a way of functions returning multiple arguments.
Well, we do if the way you compose things is using apply, but yes.
Right. Well, okay, so let's consider the case where it's an arbitrary test. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm gonna say. So I mean, even if we decide that it's too arbitrary and there's nothing to do in the what argument case, I would still argue the hash is not equal to 0 example is useful enough that it's worth still supporting a var-args version when you have an explicit test.
Right.
So we could have it so it only accepts a single arg if you don't give it a test, but if you give it a test, it's var-args.
Well, I'm going to give you an argument for. Okay, here's a question. If it's var args, if the test is fed var args, how do you determine, gosh, do we not have a way to do this? In a function with hash hash and so on, how do you determine the number of arguments it's given?
Length of list of hash hash.
Oh, yeah, right. That's fine.
I guess length of hold complete of hash hash, because you don't know if your function has attributes, but yes. That's pedantry. So
Yeah, right. Seems reasonable to me. I agree with you that the case, all right. So the only thing that is bothering me as arbitrary is this business about return the first one that, what is the default test?
oh, actually, so sorry. So there's a third argument that's relevant for the return thing. So there's a third argument, which I think should also be var args. It should also take the exact same arguments as the first two. And this is what you run and return if it fails.
Right. So actually, if you scroll up to my bullet points, I have a couple of comments about those additional arguments. Right.
Yeah.
So right. So right now the second argument currently acts as a supplement rather than a replacement for the
No, I think it acts as a replacement.
then
I'm pretty sure.
what-
It should be a replacement. If it isn't, then it should be.
Oh, is it missing? Is it that missing? Does missing of missing turn into missing? Is that why what confused me? Because that example there seems to suggest that.
Oh, the one with the. Well, which one?
So the
Oh, positive returns false on missing, if that's what you mean. I think that's or it's checking true Q. So positive of missing probably does not return true Q.
oh, that's what confused.
But yes, you're right. That example is a little bit broken then.
Okay.
Okay, so wait a minute. What was the point? The point is that
The question is it still going to fail? Is the test replacing the test that checks for failure or missing, or is the
No.
test that checks for failure
Sorry,
or
it's
missing
replacing
always
it, yeah.
there? It should replace
No.
it. Yeah.
it should just replace it.
Right.
And
So
the
it's
default test-
but the default third argument was sort of confusing the issue. Right, because notice that the -10 turns into a failure object, but the missing just turns into a missing.
Okay, could somebody tell me what is the default test?
Well, no. So sorry. That missing there did. Never mind. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, because the default test would normally be failure Q, but it isn't if it's var args.
Well, it's not. You
Well,
can
it's
look
not
in the
failure
code.
Q
It's a
either,
few things.
right?
Right. It's actually like any true of list of hash hash comma failure Q, but not failure Q. It's more bigger than that. But yeah. You can look at the code is like 10 lines long for this. You can just open the pod if you want to see it. Right. And then there's also automatic behavior for taking, for the third argument, for taking for basically if you use the default test, the third argument is basically just going to say, find me the first thing that failed the test and return that. And if you're using anything other than the default test, then the third argument wraps everything in a big failure object.
Atom on our live stream is making an interesting suggestion. They say failsafe should return the preceding term and fail fatal should halt execution. Fail none should return empty or a null object. We don't really quite have a null object. Well, of course, but here, in a sense, what we would have here is fail safe. I mean, we already have many mechanisms to halt execution.
Right. That would just be confirm.
Right.
But we still haven't really done anything with untagged, unenclosed confirms, but that is a potential behavior.
So it's even not clear where you return to. I mean,
Yeah, I know. It's some return to the top level, quote unquote, top level.
Right. Okay. But anyway, so we're back to, all right. So I'm just a little concerned. Okay. So the second argument it would be easy to have a bug where you didn't consider the Verog's case and you just gave a name here and you didn't say of #1. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that would be an easy thing to, I mean, it's a nice code assistance thing to check for. But okay, so you've got
Right.
the
I
test.
mean, that would, so the thing is, I think it's a little bit of there are two kinds of errors. There are errors that you know happen and there are errors that you don't know happen. So there are errors where it's like, well, I'm going over this list. I know the list contains missing, so I need to handle them. In which case, I think the danger of, oh, whoops, I applied it to 10 arguments isn't really a problem because we're sort of assuming, the failures are and you're targeting known failures. That's as opposed to the case of the, I don't know where the failures are, but I'm going to try and bulletproof my code. In which case, yes, it would be a problem if that would be an issue.
I think we've got a winner here. I think we pretty much know what this has to do. I think test fun overrides anything else and is Verog's fail fun. Similarly, the default fail fun is return the first failure.
Right. Although then
No, that's not going to work because
test
fun. Hold on, that's not going to work.
I know.
Test fun is Verog's. Yeah.
Right. So if you're using the automatic test fun, I would argue it should be the first failure because that is
fine. But if you
very
use
useful if it returns something directly.
Fine.
Yeah. And if
non-automatic test fun, what does it do?
I think it returns a failure.
I see, a manufactured failure.
Right. And you can see that's what it did here. So you see in the first example, the missing not available just returned immediately. Otherwise, he gave this failure.
And by the way, are we
sorry, I was muted. I was surprised by the fact that that the missing came through as missing, but the -10 came through as a failure object.
Well, I think it's because there's an explicit test given.
Right. Yes. Right. So right. So it's not I misunderstood what was happening, but now that I understand, I will just reiterate that it is potentially confusing that the default thing will, give you I expected, either both failure objects or, a missing and a -10 there. I know maybe a -10 doesn't make sense.
Hold on. Why does it give
Yeah, so I just looked at the code. So actually what the current implementation does is a bit weirder, right, than what I was saying. The current implementation just looks at the arguments. If any of the arguments are obviously failures, as in failure queue missing, etc., as in will be triggered by the default test, then it just picks the first one of those and returns that. If none of them are obvious failures, then it wraps a failure object.
Ugh.
Right. So I think probably would be better if it just always, if you give it a test, it'll always do a failure object. And if you don't give it a test, it'll always just pick the first one.
I think that's right.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right. We got a good name
Sounds
for this. This is a good name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
I would like to propose that we end here because, it's 5:35 and I don't think the echo thing is going to be a short conversation.
We just open it up and just see if it could be a short conversation. If it's not, I agree with the end.
Given the amount of text.
Yeah.
It's an important conversation, but I agree.
Right. I'm perfectly happy to start this, at the next LCC meeting, assuming nothing super urgent comes up. But I'm just saying I would rather not start.
Maybe we should just quit while we're ahead because we got a good name.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Well, that's happy holidays, everybody, and If I don't see you all before then, see you later.
Bye.
Yeah.